Hi, this is Pat Duckworth, the author of Hot Women Rock, How to Discover Your Midlife Entrepreneurial Mojo. And my guest today is somebody that I've been looking forward to interviewing now for a couple of years, but she is such a busy woman that I'm just grateful that we've shoehorned into her schedule. So let me tell you about her. She's the CEO of You Empowered Strong. She's a leadership development expert, a trainer and executive coach, as well as an international speaker and an Amazon best-selling author. There, I'm out of breath already. She's a catalyst and a change agent who works with executives, emerging leaders to help bring heart back into leadership while feeding the souls of their business. With nearly 20 years, and you're not going to believe it when you see her, she looks much too young for that, in corporate, combined with a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering, a certification as a Six Sigma black belt, and an MBA, she's a master at building exceptional, high-performing teams, maximizing and leveraging return on investment, growing emerging leaders, creating metrics for greater accountability, and catapulting individuals to achieve explosive growth. That's because she's a real powerhouse. And sometimes people say that about entrepreneurs. When you meet her, you'll know this is true. She was named a 2014-15 VIP Woman of the Year by the National Association of Professional Women and was the recipient of the 2015 Public Speakers Association Local Collaborator Award, and was nominated as a 2015 Profile Empower Central Texas Woman of Influence. I could go on, but I want to introduce you to her. So it's a big welcome to Candy Barone. Hi, Candy, how are you?
I am wonderful, Pat. Thank you so much. Yes, we have tried to do this for a while, and it is absolutely an honor to be on your show. You know how much I adore you.
So this is one of those never give up. If there's something you want, keep going after it. So I went after Candy and I had her. So I'm very pleased. Candy, you're talking to us today from Texas. Whereabouts in Texas are you?
Yes, I am in Austin, Texas, and it's one of those rare, not sunny days in Austin. So if you see my lighting, you're kind of like, are you sure you're in Texas today? Yes, I am in Austin, Texas, and absolutely love it. So.
And I'm really hoping to see you there next year. So yeah, let's not wish the time away, but I'm looking forward to being with you. So Candy, tell us a bit about how you started out. What did you do when you first left college?
Yeah, when I first left college, I was degreed as a mechanical engineer. So I was an actual engineer for about half a minute. I moved into a space to be a design engineer, and very quickly, even when I was in college, knew that engineering wasn't my calling. I just happened to say, I'm in my junior year of college. I'm already been through, and as a female in this industry, I can write my ticket. So I really did do that coming out of the gate. I was able to land a pretty lucrative job right away as a design engineer, and then really became clear that I didn't want to be behind a computer. I needed people. And so from there, I actually left my first job without having a second job because the culture was so detrimental that I made a choice that I will just figure it out. I can't stay here through the holidays because it was truly wearing on me. They didn't know how to have a female with a degree in the office, let alone a engineer. And it just was a lot of uncomfortable, not supported, painful situation. So I left. I then went and worked for Northern Illinois Gas for a while. Did some gas purchasing, which was like playing the stock market. So that was kind of fun. Ended up going back to grad school. I did 3 different runs of grad school till I finished up with my MBA, and then got recruited by a competitor of where I started to actually move in as an energy engineer. And as I was having conversations with the HR manager originally, he said, Candy, I don't want to talk to you about being an energy engineer. And I remember being a little direct even then and said, great, you're wasting my time. Why am I here? He said, I want to talk to you about sales. And instantly I said, absolutely not. He said, why? I said, I don't want to be a used car salesman. And we had this conversation, and next thing I know, I was an account exec, and I was out selling large retrofit opportunities for school districts to help them reclaim energy savings, mechanical savings, and I absolutely loved that space. I loved supporting and working with clients. I didn't like all the pressure from management about just hitting numbers, even though I was number 2 in the office. I really liked the opportunity to build relationships. And so throughout my corporate career, I continued to move into more sales roles or sales support roles and business development. And so I've been in every position you can imagine in some corporate capacity, with the exception of a direct HR role. So I did everything from practice management, change management, Six Sigma, black belt, where I ran projects for efficiency and improvement, to where I was really the risk manager and pricing Nazi, closing deals, to doing team development, people development, you name it, kind of where my career went. And it just evolved. And it's interesting because people look at my resume and say, what didn't you do in 20 years? Yeah, it's a hodgepodge of different opportunities that just landed for me to step into deeper leadership as I went through my career. So
yeah, I don't know if you know this about me, but I started off in a very male-dominated career because I started out as what in the UK is a chartered surveyor. I was working, valuing, appraising property. And when I started out, only 1% of membership of the Royal Institution were women, and they aspired to 2%. You know, they were pushing the boat out on that.
right.
So like you, I started out in a very male-dominated workplace and, you know, gradually worked my way through management and then into doing corporate work and did corporate risk management. So we have a lot of things in.
I did not know that about you. And yes, I can remember, I mean, my first sales training at Johnson Controls, it was me and 25 guys.
Yeah.
And that was, and yeah, it's a very different environment where you are the, even in my undergrad, I didn't even know there was 4 other women in my program until I graduated. I never saw them because they were on a different track, and I did not see a woman in my classes until it was time to graduate. And I'm like, where were you the last 4.5 years? It was crazy to me. So yeah, I didn't realize we had that in common.
How did you move from that into becoming an entrepreneur?
Yeah, about 6 years ago, I actually got to a space where when to back up just a little bit, when I was about 35, I hit rock bottom. I was working for GE at the time and found myself in the hospital. I had a debilitating pain in my chest that I actually, at some point, I mean, I went and self-diagnosed on web, MD, which is what we smart people, intelligent, educated people do, right? And anything, even a stubbed toe, if you scroll far enough, you have cancer, heart attack, or you're dying, right? And I was convinced I was having a heart attack at 35. Well, what had transpired was, due to the anxiety and stress that I was carrying in my role, I had physically manifested a mass in my chest that had tripped a sliding hiatal hernia. That was a wake-up call for me, because it wasn't even the pain that was the scariest. It was me being honest with my doctor about why that pain was there. And it was all of the debilitating, abusive, addictive habits that I had employed to cut the stress, whether it was putting down 5 or 6 martinis a night, whether it was going to the gym for 3 hours a day, 3 weeks nonstop, whether it was emotionally binge eating, whether it was shopping and not knowing what I bought. Everything I did was very addictive behavior to overcome all of this stress that I was not managing through. So that in itself was a wake-up call. I stepped away to go work for a nonprofit, thought that was the right space, ended up coming back to GE, and ultimately decided I needed a different environment. I really felt like I was in a human punching bag mentality. So I went to work for Northwestern Mutual, which at the time, the cultures were 180 degrees opposite, which also was a learning for me, because I went from this very fast-paced, wind and grind, burn and churn, holy cow, 80 to 100 hours a week, legitimately every week, to we're done at 4:30 and it's very relaxed and it's a little bit slower. And to go from one extreme to the other also created some challenges. Fortunately, I, at that time, got a manager that was one of the best mentors I've ever had in my life, who she and my executive VP at the time really gave me a free space to develop myself as a leader and showcase my talents and strengths. When she left the company and reorgs happen, as they always do, I ended up with someone more micromanaging than I ever had in my previous part of my career that once you become someone who opens up that wide, you can't, I never fit in the box to begin with. You absolutely can't go in the box after that. And so I took a contract role to just kind of give myself some time. And I remember them saying, you know, Candy, if you don't have a job after this contract, you don't work for the company anymore. I'm like, don't worry, I'll figure it out. The contract was 18 months. I left at 12. Yeah. And it was very clear to me. I knew that I needed to leave Milwaukee. It was too cold. I'm not a winter person. So I knew I was moving before I knew what it was. And it wasn't until I went through a series of things, my own healing and work and a purging, that as I was going through papers and knew I was moving, all of a sudden, and I remember talking to a mentor of mine, it was April of 2013. And I remember sitting on the phone saying to him, oh my God, Kevin, yes is not a program I'm supposed to build while I'm working for someone else. Yes is who I am. And it was like, I just started crying. And he had given me this fantastic book called The Traveler's Gift that chapter 6 says, do you have a decided heart? And I remember him saying, Candy Barone, my friend, you have a decided heart. And everything just started to come into place, that I literally had my first website, first business card, started my first coach certification program, and was up and running that week. I made a decision, and I still had another month before I could tell where Northwestern Mutual, because I was getting this close to my pension point and I didn't want to risk walking away from that. So I just started to dig in, and it became very clear that I needed a bigger space to carry a message that I kept trying to deliver in a very contained environment. And what's so interesting is while I kept getting shut down in those environments when I worked as an employee, now as a consultant and coach, I've been asked to come back and bring that message and train that. And I've gone back into almost every environment I used to work in my corporate career.
Yeah, fantastic. And what have you brought from the previous career? Well, there's probably so much, but what do you think are the sort of lessons you learned from the first half of your career that you've really been able to bring into this second half?
Yeah, I think there's two pieces that, actually, I would say three pieces. One is the fact that leadership is ultimately a choice. It is one of the things I teach. It's not this thing that is deemed, your responsibility. It's not, someone can't give that to you. Someone can't empower you. The very definition of empowerment is power from within. It's empower. And so when you realize that you have a choice in how you choose to show up, how you choose to serve others, and how you take personal responsibility. So if things aren't happening in your career, you get to decide how to get the right resources, the champions, the development, the growth. So that piece became really clear, that leadership ultimately effectively is a choice. The other piece inside of that has been really powerful for me is the concept of being self-full versus selfish, which I saw a lot of selfish in corporate. Selfish says you're doing this in spite of others with no regard to others and because you think it's all about you. Selfful says I'm doing this to serve others, and that means I need to make sure my cup is full or overflowing first. And there are so many people in corporate in particular, and even in our culture in general, that are burnt out, and they're so far past burnout, they're either in the fumes or the black abyss that is making it impossible for them to connect to anything meaningful in their life. And they're running this kind of Groundhog's Day in a fog where they're just get up, go to work, get drunk, go to sleep kind of mentality. And they're killing themselves slowly because they're not engaged in a way to take that back. And so that fact that leadership is a choice, the fact that people need to be self-full leads to the third thing, which is they effectively need to learn how to say yes to themselves. So I teach people how to say yes to yourself and destroy the noise that's getting in the way. So it's all that shoulding, it's all those negative frames and filters, it's all the opinions of others you choose to internalize, it's all the inefficiencies, and it's the excuses that you create. When you start to put those three things in place, that's what becomes the game changer, and I will say life changer for how you're stepping into your gifts, your strengths, your ability to influence and impact others, and feel fulfilled and live the life that you want. And so that has been the biggest pieces. That's the fundamental core of what I teach. It's really that leadership's a choice. It's really practices and strategies on how to be more self-full and knowing how to say yes to yourself and destroy the noise so that you can play at your highest and best level and offer that to others to help them do the same.
Gosh, there's so much I could ask you about all of that. My head was nodding the whole time, thinking, yes, that's so right. So this is Pat Duckworth talking to Candy Barone, and we've just been talking about leadership. I just want to kind of flip back a bit to something that I find is really juicy in all of this, which is that moment when you go from being corporate into deciding to work for yourself, because just like me, you'd invested a lot in that early part of your career. You know, you've invested time, you've been to college, you've probably invested money in your own development, and then you walk away from it and do something different. And it's that flip of identity from being corporate into entrepreneur. Did you find that easy, or what were the challenges for you?
I would say I waffled on both ends of the spectrum of that, because I would have told you I was never an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I would have said most of my life, there's nothing, I'm not an entrepreneur. And then when I look back on things I did, even from early age of, 5, 6, 10 things that I'm like, I've always been an entrepreneur. I've always had a spirit of, if there's a way, and it's one of the things I teach, one of the cliche statements that drives me crazy is when people go, where there's a will, there's a way. I'm like, wow, that's the biggest cop out ever. Because you're like, well, there's a way, maybe, perhaps, if the stars align, if this, that, versus where there's a will, there's me.
Sure.
Where there's a will, if there is an opportunity, if there is something it's up to me. And I think about everywhere in my life where I made something happen that seemed impossible because I was so clear and convicted and committed. So that idea of me not being an entrepreneur, at some point I came to the realization that I've always been an entrepreneur, which is why the box of corporate felt so tight and stuffy and, debilitating sometimes. That being said, there is a huge shift. There is a security, there's a blanket, even with the abuse and the environments that are really challenging, there's still a comfort in knowing I'm going to get the crap kicked out of me. So therefore, I just know how to participate in it. When all that's on you, no matter how much you know about business, no matter how much you know about X, Y, and Z, there's so much you don't know. And to put yourself in a space of deep vulnerability, my biggest learning opportunity as an entrepreneur has been to let go of control, my pride, my ego, and to ask for help. I still struggle mightily in that space because in corporate, I was expected to know. And I was an expert in these spaces, and asking for help was often deemed as a weakness, being vulnerable. And to be able to stand in that space, demonstrate that, and teach that to others has been scary. It's been difficult. And I always say you train what you need to teach. So the more I find moments that I need to learn it as an entrepreneur, I guarantee it's what I'm training even more when I go into my workshops and my 3-day events and my mastermind groups and whatever. It's been interesting. The other thing was I took a huge gamble when you talk about what we invest in that space. I went to banks, I talked to them, their terms, and I didn't like their terms. So I said I spent 20 years building a nest egg for me and my dog. And I took everything but my pension out to invest in my business because I was very clear that while the bank had this kind of rates and return, and I can pay myself 5 times over, and I would rather make that investment in me and stay hungry. That also has been scary because when you deplete the safety net, and there's been times that I've literally traveled in my career, especially earlier as an entrepreneur, where it has been a wing and a prayer, literally. When I have flown from an event going, okay, bags are taken care of. There's nothing in my account. How am I going to get my car out of parking? I'm like, well, worst comes to worst, I'm going to call my sister. We're going to figure it out later. And then miraculously a payment would hit, or miraculously I get off the plane and there'd be something there. Because I also had to really step into a place of deep faith that said, if this is a calling that I've been given, if I really keep knowing that I have to do this from a necessity standpoint, not an obligation standpoint, a necessity standpoint, then I have to trust that I will be given everything I need to step forward in this space. And sometimes that walk in faith is the scariest thing you do because you have a comfort safety net in corporate, whether you think you do or not. And that you are literally hanging on the high wire without anything below you sometimes. And that's, it's why not everybody steps into this space. And then also build a really different kind of community and support around you. It's one of the reasons we've gotten to be such good friends. If it weren't for groups like ABC and things that we were able to talk to other people who are allowing themselves to get vulnerable on a very real and deep level, there'd be many times, and there's many times I've looked at LinkedIn going, I'm just going to go get another job. Like, I can't, because viscerally my whole body reacts and says, I would rather be a dog walker than ever go back to that space. I can't.
Yeah, and that's why I love doing these interviews, because every woman's story, and I do interview some men as well, are so different. And we've heard them at conferences. You know, we've heard people tell their stories, and entrepreneurship isn't like an A to B, it's a
and a spiral and everything else.
A few fireworks and, you know, all sorts of stuff. But, you know, these people have hung on in there because they were so passionate about what they were doing. So what does success mean to you now?
Oh, it's so, I love that question. It's amazing. I ask that question in every one of my events, and it's amazing how much that makes people uncomfortable. I love that question. And I think about one of my favorite poems of all time is from Ralph Waldo Emerson. It says, oh no, actually it's Robert Frost. And it's a poem around what success means. And at the very end of the poem, it says, success is knowing that one life has breathed easier because you have lived. And I think about my measure.
I just went goosey.
Oh, I love that. And when I think about, you know, in corporate, my success measure was show me the money. It was, I want to get paid for performance. It was how much can I bank? And honestly, one of my decisions to leave corporate was when I got a 19% raise on a very lucrative 6-figure salary and went, oh my God, all I want to do is crawl under my desk and go to sleep. And it's just more money in my account. And I was willing to step away and say, this isn't what I want my life to represent. And I think about another quote that I heard from Jay Abraham that says, if you truly believe that what you have brings value to your client, and I would just say to people in general, then you have a moral obligation to step up and serve that in every way possible. And one of the biggest changes for me, even starting my business, was I used to say, I want to have a 6-7-figure business. I'm going to make $1 million in my business. And it was the moment that I changed my measure of success to say, I want to impact 1 million people.
Yeah.
And everything changed. For me, success is about, am I stepping into my most magnificent light? As Marianne Williamson would say, it's our greatest light. It's our light, not our darkness, that frightens us, right? It's that that space of magnificence. Am I willing to step into a space to put out the gifts that were given to me and sing my song as loudly as I possibly can, so that I can be a lighthouse for the people that need that light to move into a space that gives them personal freedom, gives them joy, gives them fulfillment, and allows them to empower themselves. I cannot empower anyone. You Empowered Strong is the name of my company, and it's not by accident. Because when you say yes to yourself, it's that space to say, I am empowered. I have power within me. Am I willing to tap into it? And so success for me is when I can reach people that have been in a coma or half asleep. And when I can, and it's one of the reasons I love going back to corporate and working with some of those leaders who are in that mid to upper level emerging leader space, when they can connect for the first time with their 13-year-old daughter. When I have men who come up to me and say, you've changed my life and saved my marriage because I'm finally showing up for my family. When you have grown men and women who will allow themselves to shed the layers of stuff and shoulding they put all over themselves to really feel for the first time, that is the greatest measure of success. It's the moments I see them shift. And the more people I can affect to create that shift, the more I know that I'm changing the vibration of the world. I am creating healing. It's interesting because you know Natalie Ledwell, she and I were talking once, and Nat was like, Candy, she goes, I like to work with the people that are already awakened. She goes, you're the one that's awakening them. And I love the way she said that, because for me, that's success. When I can see that moment when they wake up for the first time, because once you wake up, you can't go back to sleep. And to have that be the biggest, that fills my soul. And I know that it's a moral obligation to stand in that place. The money, the universe will deliver. God, universe, source delivers everything I need. It's not about that. It's about creating the effective change for people to wake up.
Yeah, and when I do hypnotherapy with my clients, they think as a hypnotherapist, I'm going to put them to sleep. What I'm actually doing is waking them up. I would say I'm waking them up from the trances they've been doing, the work trance, the getting by trance, all the little trances they've been doing. I've got to wake them up from that and get them back in touch again. And then if they want to trance, but with a much better trance, that's okay. But let's get out the bad trances and get back into the good ones. That would be
I love that.
better.
I love that.
Important. So if you had one tip for a new entrepreneur, you've given us so much already, but what would you sum up that one thing? If you're a new entrepreneur, what do they need to do?
Oh my gosh. The one thing I would say is lose your ego, lose it. Let yourself just drop the pride. Know that you can't do this alone. And I'm going to say you can't do this alone. I know there's people like, yeah, you can do it. No, you can't do this alone to be playing at your highest and best level. You absolutely cannot show up in this world at your highest and best level by yourself, in a bubble, in isolation. And so until you drop the ego, until you drop the control, until you are willing to be vulnerable and ask for help, just know that you're going to make it far more difficult than it has to be along the ride. Find those people that love you, support you, challenge you, and are willing to see you as a hot freaking mess and love you through it anyway. You need those people faster and sooner in your life. Stop waiting to connect with people that are going to help lift you to the next level. Just please don't think you have to do this alone.
That is just so important. Thank you for saying that. Candy, the people watching, they're going to want to connect with you. How do they do that?
Best way is twofold. One, I am all over social media. I am prominent on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. So just find me, Candy Barone, easy enough. Otherwise, you can go to my website. It's candybaroneinternational.com. There's a whole slew of available resources, things that will help you, that can move you forward. So,
thank you so much. So what have we learned from today? There's so much, I don't even know where to begin. Let's start right at the end, that you're not doing this on your own. That phrase, solopreneur, it's not actually true. You can't do this by yourself. You always need other people around you. So let that one go. That this journey of being an entrepreneur isn't like this. It's all over the place and you have to accept the mess of it. And if you want to be your highest and best self, mix with people who are going to help you to fill your cup up, because you can't give to others if you've got nothing left. And leadership is a choice. Choose to be a leader and step out there helping other people to shine their light. That's where we need to be. Thank you so much, Candy. It's been such a joy talking to you.
Thank you.
And to all of our viewers, watch out for more of these amazing interviews with wonderful entrepreneurs. There's always so much we can learn. I'll see you next time.